All right, let's dive into a truly baffling medical mystery. We're going back in time to early 20th century New York. We've got a phantom illness, a super persistent disease detective, and a cook who, well, she became a legend for all the wrong reasons.
So get this. The person at the center of this whole story, she never felt sick, not for a single day. And yet everywhere she went, sickness and even death seemed to follow. I mean, can you imagine? Someone who seems totally healthy but leaves this trail of devastation behind them? This isn't some made-up story. It was a terrifying reality, and it had New York's richest families absolutely panicked.
Okay, so let's set the scene. We're in New York City, early 1900s, and there's this phantom plague, this mystery illness popping up in the last place on Earth you'd expect.
The disease was typhoid fever. And, back then, everyone thought of typhoid as a disease of poverty, right? Something you'd find in crowded, unsanitary places. So when it starts showing up in these fancy, pristine homes of the super wealthy, well, that was just baffling. It made no sense. They checked everything. The water was clean, the food was fine. There was just no logical thread connecting these families. It was like a ghost was sweeping through the wealthiest parts of the city.
And this wasn't just a mild sickness. In one house alone, 3 people died. 3. So the stakes were incredibly high. You could just feel the pressure mounting, right? They had to find the source, and they had to find it fast, before more people died.
So this was the big question, the one that kept everyone up at night. Who or what was this invisible killer? Think about it. This killer wasn't some intruder. They were being welcomed right into these homes. The search was on for someone, or something, that could be spreading this plague completely undetected.
And this is where our disease detective enters the story. A guy named George Soper was hired to crack what seemed like an impossible case. Now, Soper wasn't your typical detective. He was a sanitary engineer, which is basically a fancy way of saying he hunted germs for a living.
Soper was super methodical. He started with the usual suspects. The water supply? Nope. Clean. The milk delivery, the food sources, all clear. He even checked the houses themselves, the plumbing, the ventilation, nothing. So, when all the obvious answers were dead ends, he had this breakthrough idea. What if he was looking for the wrong thing? What if the carrier wasn't a what, but a who? A person who moved from house to house.
So Soper starts digging. He goes through the employment records for every single one of the affected families. And as he's laying it all out, a pattern begins to emerge. One name just keeps popping up over and over again. An Irish cook named Mary Mallon. It was like clockwork. Mary starts a new job, and a few weeks later, boom, typhoid breaks out. Soper knew he had his connection. So Soper thinks he's got it all figured out. He's found his source. But when he finally tracks down this Mary Mallon, he hits a major roadblock. His whole theory had one huge gaping hole in it. And that problem was Mary herself. She was furious. She basically told him he was crazy. She looked and felt perfectly healthy. She insisted she'd never had typhoid ever. I mean, how could she be spreading a disease that she herself didn't have? It didn't make any sense to her. She absolutely refused to give him any samples, and apparently she even chased him off with a kitchen fork. She was not having it. So Mary's complete refusal to believe she was sick actually pushed Soper toward a really radical idea for the time, a concept that was almost brand new to medicine, the asymptomatic carrier. The idea that a person could be infected with something, have 0 symptoms, feel totally fine, but still be contagious and spread it to other people.
And this is what made the whole situation so dangerous. A normal typhoid patient, they feel awful. They have a high fever, aches, they know they're sick. But Mary, she felt great, perfectly healthy. But inside her body, the typhoid bacteria, Salmonella typhi, were just living there, shedding into the food she was cooking for these families. She was, in a way, a walking public health threat. And the terrifying part is, she had absolutely no idea.
Well, Mary's refusal to cooperate really forced the health department's hand. They decided they had to take drastic action, a step that would completely change the course of her life.
And look, the numbers were just undeniable. When investigators tallied it all up, they officially linked Mary to at least 51 cases of typhoid, and worse, 3 of those people died. From the perspective of the authorities, the risk she posed it was too big. They couldn't let it continue.
So in 1907, they did something pretty extreme. They forcibly took her from her home and put her in quarantine on this isolated island called North Brother Island. After 3 years, they let her go, but with a promise. She had to swear she would never, ever work as a cook again. The problem was, cooking was all she knew. It was how she made a living. And sure enough, 5 years later, there's a big typhoid outbreak at a hospital. And when they look for the source, they find a cook working under a fake name. And yep, it was Mary.
And that was it. They sent her right back to that island, and this time there was no release date. All told, Mary Mallon spent 26 years of her life in forced isolation. 26 years. A prisoner, really, of a disease she couldn't even feel.
But Mary's story is so much more than just a medical detective case. What happened to her opened up this huge, complicated debate. It raises these really tough ethical questions that, honestly, we are still grappling with today.
I mean, look at the two sides here. On the one hand, you've got public health. The city had a responsibility to stop people from dying, right? They had scientific proof she was the source, and their job was to protect the community. But then you have Mary's side, her individual rights. She never broke a law, yet she was basically given a life sentence. She lost her freedom, her job, her right to decide what happened to her own body, all because of something inside her she wasn't even aware of.
And that's really the heart of the issue, isn't it? It's the dilemma that Typhoid Mary's story leaves us with. She was trapped between this terrifying new science she probably didn't understand and the public's absolute fear of her. Her case really forces us to confront this incredibly difficult question, one that still doesn't have an easy answer. When one person's freedom is a direct threat to everyone else's safety, who wins?